Taika Waititi said quite famously that New Zealand is a very racist country. Do you tend to agree with that statement?
Yeah, I still think it is not a racist country.
Right. New Zealand is changing. More than ever, love is breaking cultural and ethnic barriers, forging relationships and blending traditions, values, and history. But the numbers cannot tell the full story. Only people can. In Aotearoa, mixed couples will navigate through the joys of romance, the challenges of racism, and deep questions about their own identities. Their stories reveal who we really are as a nation. This program is about uncovering those stories and shedding a light on Aotearoa's past, present, and future. And the couples we meet today will give us a glimpse of mixed marriages between Māori and non-Māori cultures. First up, we journey to Auckland's Papakura suburb and meet with Tony and Catherine Kake.
He honore he krore ki te atua, he maungarongo ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Hanga e te atua hei ngā kauhau, ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatongi o tō wairua tapu, hei āwhina hei tohu ia mātou. Hei ako hoki ngā kupu I roto I tēnei marae. Ake, āmene.
Kia ora, Tony. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your cultural ancestry?
Kia ora, ko Tony Kake tōku ingoa, no Ngāti Hau ki Ngāpuhi, Ngāti Mahuta, Ngāti Whawhake, Waikato Tainui. So half of me is from up the north on my dad's side, and the other half of me is from Kai Tumutumu Marae, which is around Huntly. I grew up in Papakura, went to primary school here in Papakura. There's 3 other brothers and 1 sister. So there wasn't a lot of money around, but we thought we were the richest people down the street. Rich in terms of we had a lot of friends. We played with our street neighbours from daylight to dusk. Yeah, we thought life was pretty good, mate. Just playing games all the time. It wasn't until my adult life that I realised how tough my parents had it in terms of being a freezing worker. My mum was a nurse. Yeah, just bringing up a family of 5.
Kia ora, Catherine. Can you tell us a little bit about your cultural background and cultural ancestry as well?
Kia ora, I'm Catherine. I come from Irish and Scottish ancestry. My parents immigrated in 1957 to New Zealand. I was born in Kawerau in the Bay of Plenty, and then I moved up to Papakura when I was about 4, so I grew up in Papakura too. My childhood, we were a real strict Catholic family. I have 3 sisters and a brother. I'm the second youngest. Yeah, no, we had pretty good childhood. My father worked in the freezing works with his trade as a fitter and turner. My mum, she was a stay-at-home mum until we got a bit older, and then she got small jobs and stuff. Yeah.
Our second couple, George Ngatai and Raewyn Brana, bring their own unique take on the mixed marriage experience. Their love story is one of self-discovery, resilience, and finding harmony within their pronounced differences.
I think for me, I was fortunate because I had Māori parents, and my mother was actually, she, I suppose, wore the pants in the family, but she was of Ngāti Awa descent in Whakatane, and everything there was all Māori. So she spoke Māori. We did Māori things. Everything she was involved with was Māori. In terms of my father, he was from Ngāti Maniapoto, which is in the King Country. We were very much aware of both sides, being Ngāti Awa and Ngāti Maniapoto.
So my background is that I'm a Māori, Indian, Irish, urban girl. My father is Gujarati, and his mother is half Irish, half Indian, and his father is Indian. And my mother's Māori. I was raised in a big family, so there's 8, plus my parents is 10.
I'm the youngest of 8, 6 boys and 2 girls. My mum and dad made that 10, similar to Raewyn. But I was probably fortunate because I was quite spoiled. Well, they say that. I don't believe I was, but we had a pretty good life in Whakatane.
Growing up, one of the things that I really loved was that on the Māori side, every time we had a funeral, I knew that we were going to the marae for 3 days and there'd be lots of food. So I was very close to some of my auntie and uncles on the Indian Irish side who had passed away. And I remember saying to my grandmother, when was the funeral, expecting it to be 3 days. And then she said, well, you won't be coming, you can come to the wake. And I'm like, what's a wake as a young girl? Because on the Māori side, it's 3 days on a marae, lots of crying, lots of playing, lots of kids. Yeah, so I knew that because I'd grown up with different events of bereavement.
Well, I always grew up around things Māori, you know, kapa haka and was at the marae, you know, it was, you know, being outside of that box was probably the attraction. So, you know, I'm a bit of a, I like to challenge the norm, I like to push the boundaries. Not that I'm ditching my culture at all. You know, I'm staunchly Māori, but yeah, the opportunity presented itself to get me introduced to this beautiful person back when we were, I think you were 16?
Yes.
I was 19.
Yeah.
There was a big move. My parents actually moved to Invercargill, which was quite a cultural shock for me. And so therefore we learned different things and moved away from everything that was comfortable for us.
Well, when I went to Whakatane, I didn't know anybody. I knew no one, but then I'd just come out of a long-term marriage breakup and I went to Whakatane to start again. And I was down there for a few years before I started going out with George.
We actually met at the bus stop. We saw each other at the bus stop. Oh, I thought he was attractive, but I thought he was a bit older than me, and I didn't think I had a chance, sort of thing.
Look, I was attracted to Catherine's blue eyes, to be honest. She was stunning to me.
A colleague of mine had asked whether or not I could move home to manage Aotearoa Social and House Service. On day 2 of me being back there, having to present to the state, and it just so happened that Raewyn was, of course, the head of that team that we had to go and present to.
George presented as the manager of the iwi, and I remember him speaking, and I turned to my...
Eloquently, wasn't it?
I turned to my boss and said, who is that ignorant, arrogant person? He's speaking from a book.
I kind of thought Tony looked a little bit like Michael Jackson.
I had the moves on back then. You see, I was 19, and back then it was right in the hype of disco era, and you know, so I had my groove on. I had hair back then, had plenty of hair.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed with George, and I don't think he was impressed with me when we first met.
No, it wasn't, because I had met her, and everybody said, oh, this is Raewyn Barner. And my response was, what the heck is an Indian doing running a Māori team? I sort of went to her boss and sort of complained, and therefore sort of tried to, you know, sideswipe her back then.
He had everything going for him. He was good looking, funny, kind, respect. The respect was a big thing, like the way he respected my dad's rules, getting me home at a certain time. Yeah,
well, we bought a house in 1989. August 89, I think we bought it, eh?
Yeah.
And then we got married in March. So between August and March, Catherine wasn't allowed to stay at our house, although she was the
paying the mortgage.
Paying the mortgage.
And I appreciated that Tony was willing to wait. And
So who stayed at the house?
I did.
Tony and his
Alone?
mates.
Me and my mates. Me and all my league mates.
I think over the months and into years, we realised that we had the same kaupapa. We wanted to actually work well for our community, our iwi, and we sort of got to spend a lot more time. But at the end of the day, it was Raewyn that stalked me. And so...
So George dated me for 2 years, and he took me all over New Zealand. We went all over New Zealand for work, and George would always, he'd ask me out and he'd take me to hotels, and he'd always book a room for himself. And I'd say, aren't you going to stay in my room? And he'd go, no. And I said to him one night, oh, I've got a babysitter. Would you like to stay the night? And he goes, oh, no, thank you. And he said to me he was about to dump me because he thought I was a bit forward. And I'd been dating him for 2 freaking years.
Who do you think is the more romantic of the two?
Oh, that's
I think-
me, hands down.
Yeah. No, I think Tony.
No. I forget birthdays and Catherine has to remind me, mate. I'm not romantic at all.
Yes, you are.
So who was the more romantic out of the two of you?
George.
Oh, probably me.
George. When I started dating him, he sent me 100 chocolate hearts, and my father said, "What the hell's wrong with him? Why doesn't he give you fruit? Why does it?" Because my dad's a little Indian man, and he said, "Is he trying to make you fat?"
Did you have to negotiate any family disapproval around your relationship before you guys got married?
I think, like, my parents were a little bit shocked at first, because in their minds I would marry a Catholic Scottish boy, but we're in New Zealand, so it wasn't going to happen. And my dad's younger sister started dating a Māori boy, and my grandfather sent her back to Scotland. But once they got to know Tony, they didn't have a problem.
So my grandmother had a lot of disapproval around Māori people. George is my second husband. My first husband was actually Māori, and when I told my grandmother I was marrying a Māori boy, she said, "I refuse to come to the wedding because you're marrying a dirty, lazy Māori." And I love...
That's husband number one.
New Zealand is becoming increasingly diverse. In 2001, 9% of Kiwis identified with multiple ethnicities, rising to over 11% by 2013. Among children aged 0 to 14, nearly a quarter identify with more than one ethnic background. The report, Ethnic Intermarriage in New Zealand, found intermarriages common among Asians, Maori, and Pacific peoples, especially New Zealand-born individuals. For Maori, over half now belong to more than one ethnic group, while for Pacific communities, it's over a third. The multicultural wedding, what was that like? Did the guests' families get along?
It was very cultural. It was a cultural shock for Raewyn's family because on our marae, we don't translate, we don't speak English. Everything was done in Māori. And there was never ever a second thought that we had to translate. Even today, 27 years later, they don't speak in English on the marae.
But look, our wedding was huge. It was over 300 people at our wedding here in Papakura. It was a meeting of the Scottish people and the Māori people. We welcomed into their own church because we're tangata whenua. We welcomed their church parishioners and the Scottish family into their church.
A pōwhiri.
So we did a pōwhiri to welcome them in.
It was in 1990.
Yeah, so the pōwhiri, the true meaning behind pōwhiri is rituals of engagement. So this is exactly what it was, the two cultures, the two people coming together.
My dad's brother, who's Indian, who I was one of his favourite nieces, he said to me, "Is George's family poor?" And I said, "Oh, why?" And he goes, "There's not many presents here. Where's the presents?" I said, "Oh, Uncle, his family had travelled up earlier. They bought a cow. Someone else had given a sheep. Someone else had given a pig. Someone else had gone and dived for all the seafood." So from the Māori side, heaps of people gave food for our wedding. And so I remember my uncle being quite shocked.
At the time, Tony's parents were in a kapahaga group, Te Wakahuia, and they were really good singers. And so every time there was a speech, there was a song, which is like a Māori tradition. Yeah. After my family had a few whiskies, they thought, we can do that too. And they were really...
Man, they held their own, mate. They held their side of the game, put it that way. Very good.
So it was a good night.
It was good. The best of Scottish music and Scottish songs and also the Māori songs.
Love doesn't see colour or culture, but society, unfortunately, often does. Even in a country as diverse as New Zealand, mixed couples face biases, sometimes subtle, sometimes blatant. How have George and Raewyn, and Tony and Catherine navigated these moments?
Well, I think I've matured over the years and got a bit harder in terms of my opinions around race relations in this country. It's interesting when people meet Catherine for the first time, particularly a lot of our Māori. Me, Catherine, they get a bit shocked. Everyone expects me to be going out with a Māori woman.
We used to walk into a room, and because I heard someone tell me this, that, oh, here comes Ebony and Ivory, because that song was out in those days.
When George was working at a particular place, I went to meet him for lunch. They didn't know who I was, and then the staff were going, I believe his wife's Indian, he probably bought her off the internet. And I was actually sitting there, and I looked. And then George comes up and he goes, he was actually the boss of this place, and he goes, oh, hi guys, hey, have you met my wife? And I went, kia ora, he didn't buy me off the internet.
I was working, like voluntary working, and I received a hoodie that day, Papakura marae hoodie, and I put it on because it was cold, and I was walking across, and a lady came up to me and said, that's my hoodie, this is my marae, and just started to get quite aggro. And then a couple of the staff came and sort of calmed her down, yeah.
Like any marriage, a mixed marriage isn't just about navigating external pressures. It is also about understanding yourself, specifically your own cultural identity. Who am I in this relationship? And how can I stay true to my roots while embracing my partner's culture?
I was yesterday with an Indian leader, and I took him to a government agency, and I was talking for him because he's elderly, and I said to him, I'm just going to say you're my uncle so I don't have to go through, you're a community leader. So I said, I'm here to support my uncle. And they said, yeah, well, you look Indian, but you've got a moko. And this was only yesterday, you know, and we're wondering why you've got a moko as an Indian. It's because I'm Indian Māori.
How long have you had the moko?
About 8 years now.
Yeah, about that.
I've always wanted one, but my mother said I had to wait till she'd passed on.
And I never wanted one. I never ever wanted her to have it.
Why was that?
Well, I suppose because it's very much there. You can't hide it from anything. And so I didn't want the challenges that would have come with that. There'd be that discrimination about the fact that you've got all of this on you. It's really hard just having and being Māori to then have to manage the fact that you've got this thing on your face that people are blocking hearing what you're trying to say. They haven't gotten past what's on your face.
Sometimes it's hard, you know, if I'm somewhere and, you know, you can hear Pākehās running Māoris down. And now that I have children, they're Māori, so now I feel like I need to stick up for them.
It's fascinating. You have fostered so many children from mixed backgrounds. What motivated you to do this?
We've got 3 biological children. I felt like they had a good upbringing, like they were lucky. And with Tony working at the marae, he used to come home and tell me stories about, you know, what's happening. And
Could have brought some home on the weekend, actually.
I just thought, well, maybe we could help, like, you know, respite or...
We're in a position where we can. It's all our kids. We're very, very proud of our own. Don't get us wrong. You know, although we've got 16 whāngai kids or foster kids over the years, but our kids are very important to us as well. You know, but they're all adults. They're all doing pretty good.
We actually got given the opportunity to adopt 2 boys at 1.5 and 2.5, and I always wanted Pākehā kids because our kids and myself being sort of not well received in a predominantly Pākehā world, we always got challenged being Māori. And so if you were fairer skinned, then hopefully that challenge wouldn't actually be as challenging.
How do you think mixed marriage affected your kids? Is it positively or negatively?
I think overall positively, but there was some negative times for them, you know, like at high school and just where we live, there's like, they call it the dark side and the white side, and we lived on the white side, and our daughter used to be, you know, bullied on the bus about that. You come from the white side. But she went away and got a degree in Māori studies. And
Sarah, our middle child, she works here at the marae and she's getting right into her culture, getting right into her korowai. Alicia, our eldest one, she's always been staunch in terms of her te reo. She's probably the best speaker in the house, actually. And Caleb, he's coming along. He knows who he is.
Caleb's partner, her ancestry is Scottish, and Sarah's partner, his ancestry is Irish, so, but you're both New Zealand born partners, yeah.
So our youngest one has got blondish hair, green eyes, and I used to always say to him, you're the spitting image of mum. I went one day to pick him up from early childhood, and I was walking to the gate and I was waving to him, and he's going, hi mum, and the kid goes, your mum's black. And he looks at me and he goes, no, my mum's not black. And the kid goes, your mum's black, and the kid kicked him. And then I got into the centre to pick him up, and he looked at me and he said, are you black? And that was the first time he, at 4 years old, that he ever knew there was a difference.
Look, that's just life, eh? You know, just if you give them the right values and understanding of how to deal with those situations, walk away if there's, don't keep adding to idiot conversations. I think my kids know that they're Ngāpuhi, Waikato, Tainui, and they're also Scottish,
Ngāti Scotland.
Ngāti Scotland.
Whether by nature or by coincidence, Tony and Catherine and George and Raewyn don't just share the experience of raising adopted or whangai children. Both couples are also fiercely dedicated to their communities. Whether it's leading Papakura Marae and its various community outreach programs, or by running a network of 7 Whanaora community clinics which provide low-cost healthcare to vulnerable people, these couples have found a shared purpose in giving back to Aotearoa.
So, Tony, we're in this hallowed space. Can you tell us a little bit more about Papakura, the marae, and the work you do here?
Okay, Papakura Marae has been around since the 1960s. A lot of locals were involved in the establishment of this marae, and so I took over as the CEO in 2010, built it up to, we've got over 52 services, we employ about 86 staff. But it's that place, it's an urban marae, it's not a marae like some of them that are the people who run it are connected to the land. I refer to it as a he whenua taurikura. We try and make this place welcoming to anyone and come here as an oasis if you want to just sit here at the marae, just enjoy the atmosphere. There's always a cup of tea, there's always a kai, some food here for our whānau. We feed over 200 people every Thursday night through a community dinner. To me, I've got a saying around here, there are 2 ships that survive in a storm, partnerships and relationships. That's how I roll this marae.
I had approached the District Health Board and said, look, I'd like to set up a general practice. They came back and says there's enough Māori general practices. And in my head, I was just thinking, do you say this to normal doctors? There's too much Pākehā general practices. They said that there were too many Māori practices for me, so I couldn't do it. It just so happened that one Māori provider in Auckland sold, and so the door opened for us.
The racism that we faced on setting up our clinic with other providers who were non-Māori, of just saying things like we should stay in our lane, stick to social services, giving out food parcels. Was one CEO, and we were like, that is so offensive. We were the
very first Māori-owned general practice in Pukekohe, and that was 10 years ago. In Christchurch, it was even worse.
We were the first
Māori-owned general practice down in Christchurch. We were always given that Māori card, or in Raewyn's case, the Indian card.
Like they'd say, what's our role in the general practice? And then I'd go, we own it. And then they'd carry on talking, what's your role? And I remember saying to one of them, you've actually asked me that question 3 times, and 3 times I've said to you, we own it. What don't you understand about owning it?
In 2018, filmmaker Taika Waititi confronted New Zealand with the statement that he considered us a racist country. He was quoted to say that, even today, people just flat out refuse to pronounce Māori names properly, but they go all out to say Camembert properly. This is one person's lived experience, but an experience that, if he's right, should be common among others from our community.
Taika Waititi said quite famously that New Zealand is a very racist country. Do you tend to agree with that statement?
I still think it is not a racist country.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
with a bit of racism thrown in every now and again.
Look,
Long way to go.
we've got a long way to go.
Right.
And I think there are parts of New Zealand that have got a longer way to go, but most of New Zealand are actually getting there.
I think we still live in the land of milk and honey, but I think that ugly racism, and that's from both sides, from Māori and non-Māori, it comes out all the time.
We face discrimination from people who've been Māori Indian, then we face it from our own being Māori, then we face it from other people.
Is it a urban-rural divide, or is it something across?
I think urban are actually getting there a lot faster.
Right.
Your rural communities are just, as I say, in Whakatane it was just Māori and Pākehā. There's still places like that are still like that.
See, there's always going to be cultural difference, and there always has been. Catherine will always kind of question some of the things that I talk about and that I believe in what's happening politically in the whole Māori world and balancing that. So there is cultural difference all the time. But I think, when you get one culture here, another culture here, it's about the bit in the middle. It's the bit in the middle, I think, is where the gold is. And that's probably where you win some, you lose some. That's where the negotiation, that's where the gold really happens.
How our people are now, the challenges that they have, I suppose the fact that the majority of our people that we work with now are on benefits has shown what colonisation has done to them and has made them see that what they have now, the fact they're on a benefit, that's classified as being normal. The fact that they're actually involved in drugs and alcohol, that's the cause of that is through colonisation, because their great-grandparents had things that behaviours, dysfunctions that they had to deal with back then. They've actually times it by 7 today.
So, to focus on the family, the two of you sacrificed a lot. And in fact, you didn't even have your first trip. Your first overseas trip was only just recently. Can you tell us where it was and what you learned from it?
We went to India. It's not somewhere I thought I'd ever go, but it was amazing.
We hadn't travelled for many years, or ever actually, because couldn't afford it. But the experience of particularly India was mind-blowing, really. The culture, and then the cultures within the culture, the Indian culture, I think was just fascinating. We'd travel for half an hour and probably go through 3 different religious beliefs or languages, and I was able to touch things from the 6th, 7th century, way older than this country. This country was Aotearoa was only discovered around the 13th century. These artefacts, you can go up to them and touch them. That was just how ancient the place was and beautiful.
When I'm in India and I want to go and live in India as my long-term goal, I absolutely feel that I'm at home because I'm accepted as Raewyn Bana. Nobody judges me for being Māori Indian. Everybody just thinks I'm an Indian. I've had people say, "Are you from Rajasthan?" Because Rajasthan, in the villages, apparently the women have different type tattoos on their faces. So when I'm in India, people just think I'm from the village. When I'm in New Zealand or other countries like Australia, I often get Māori not happy. Why have you got a muku? And I just think, wow, it's our own society here in New Zealand that struggle with biculturalism.
I'd grown up with a lot of stuff that I'd seen on TV about how India had been colonised as well. So some similarities to my home country here in Aotearoa. So, but it was pleasing to see that they were disestablishing a lot of that from their culture, from the Indian culture, and reclaiming their space. From a Māori perspective, I'd say you're getting your tino rangatiratanga on, your mana motu hake. So you're getting your right to lead, your right to control your own destiny. Good on you. Good on you.
Mixed race identities in New Zealand sit at the crossroads of history. We've moved beyond rigid classifications to a more fluid understanding of ethnicity. Exposure to different cultures in schools, workplaces, and communities have made mixed marriages a natural part of society, fostering understanding and belonging. Mixed marriages aren't just love stories or statistics. They're about acceptance and evolution of our culture. These stories challenge us to find common ground while celebrating our differences. True social cohesion isn't just about policies. It's also about learning from lived experiences. The numbers cannot tell us what it means to live in Aotearoa or what lessons we need to learn. For that, we must listen to the stories of those who have chosen to love without borders.
Look, the politics of the day is I'm pro-Māori. I want to advance the interests of Māori or address the inequities. And you'll find Māori, Pacifica, and a lot of our South Asian populations are in that area, that category. So I'm all about everyone advancing along this continuum. So I think the gap between the rich and poor in this country is widening. So one of my social obligations is to ensure that we all advance, not just those with the haves.
I think within all multicultural families, the heritage and the culture is really important. And I think in colonisation we can get too caught up in the colonisation of just New Zealand society of multicultural. And it's really important for us that, for me, that my children and grandchildren don't forget our whakawhawha.
That's key to me too. Know who you are, know where you come from, and know why we're here and what we have to do.
It's more around how you accept each other's values, accept each other's pasts and culture, and for me it's about how you see the best in that, how you see the beauty of each other's culture.
We've got to actually learn each other's culture, whether it's Māori or Indian or Irish or even tribally. You know, there's differences between Ngāti Awa, Maniapoto and Ngāpuhi, but we've just worked on that relationship. And I think that as long as we're on the same page in terms of what we want to achieve for our own whānau, our own hapu and our own iwi, then we'll get there.
So we took our grandkids to India this year, and to see their faces when they touched India, and said, our grandfather was from here, because they couldn't conceptualise that they're Indian until they got there. And seeing and hearing them say that this is our family, for me is really important. I'm a Māori, Indian, Irish, urban girl. Yeah.
Well, we just got to work on it, As a country, we've just got to work on relationships. If you get the relationships right, then I think we can advance a whole lot more together. It's greed that gets in the way.
And you think walking in each other's shoes actually helps you to understand the other?
No. No, Catherine will never wear my shoes totally, and I don't want to wear hers. It's about walking together. There's the difference, hey? There's the difference. Catherine will never be Māori, I'll never be Scottish.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be. But just to say, look, it's a work in progress. Our relationship needs to stay strong.
But it's
love you, but
it's important to keep your own identity. Yeah.